The galaxy had never seen an event like this. In the grand hall of the council, planets from every corner of the stars had gathered, each sending its brightest, most capable representative. The chamber was enormous, stretching as far as the eye could see, filled with glowing consoles, hovering chairs, and walls that shimmered with maps of distant systems. Every being in the hall was unusual in its own way, some with skin that reflected light, some with eyes like liquid crystal, some with limbs that seemed almost impossible for humans to imagine. They all had one thing in common. They had been chosen as candidates to become the next universal monarch, the ruler of all known civilizations. At the center of the room, towering above everyone, was the scanner. It was an enormous, intricate machine, ancient and perfect. Its surface was smooth metal, covered in softly glowing symbols that moved in endless patterns as if alive. It could read minds, measure emotions, predict outcomes, and see truths that even the wisest beings could not. For centuries, the scanner had chosen rulers. It had never failed. Every candidate it had approved in the past had gone on to rule wisely and justly, or at least efficiently. The council waited in silence as the scanner began its work. One by one, candidates stepped forward. A tall being from the water world of Nerelia floated into the chamber, its skin glowing softly blue. It answered the scanner's questions with perfect clarity, solved its puzzles with ease, and passed its tests flawlessly. Next came a being from the volcanic planet of Pyros, with eyes like fire and a mind that calculated faster than any human computer. It too passed without difficulty. One by one, candidates from dozens of worlds were approved, each leaving the hall to the soundless gaze of the scanner. And then it was time. The human stepped forward. His name was Liam. He was young, perhaps no older than 25 by human standards, with simple brown hair and plain green eyes. His clothes were simple as well, a soft tunic and trousers, nothing like the ornate robes and armor of the alien candidates. Many counselors noticed him immediately and whispered to each other. He looked small, ordinary, fragile even. Some of the aliens laughed quietly behind their hands. A human? One of them whispered. Are we really considering this species for the highest honor in the galaxy? But Liam ignored them. He walked with steady steps, his head held high, and approached the scanner. The machine's glow spread over him, scanning every cell, every thought, every intention. It was as if the scanner was trying to see into a mirror, looking for something familiar, but what it found in Liam was unlike anything it had ever encountered. Then the machine paused. No light flickered. No hum filled the room. Not even the faint whirring of its internal gears. The entire hall went still. Some counselors shifted nervously in their chairs. Whispers spread quickly like wildfire. What does it mean? One elder asked, his voice trembling slightly. Has the scanner ever paused before? Never, another replied, shaking his head. It has always given a result. Always. There is no precedent for this. Liam stood quietly, his hands folded in front of him. He looked calm, almost serene, as if nothing in the galaxy could disturb him. The counselors studied him, noting how his green eyes seemed to shine even under the scanner's gaze, how his posture did not waver, how he radiated a quiet confidence that they could not explain. The scanner's glow pulsed faintly, but there was no signal, no approval, no rejection. It was as if it had come to a complete halt, unsure what to do with this creature in front of it. Some counselors shifted uncomfortably. Many had spent their entire lives believing in the perfect logic of the scanner. It had been the ultimate authority for centuries. If it could not decide, then what did that mean? Some began to murmur openly now, voices growing louder. This human, it must be a mistake, one said. Surely it is not ready. Surely it cannot lead. Or maybe it is a test, another suggested, her voice quiet but sharp. Perhaps the scanner is challenging us, showing us something we do not understand. But Liam did not move. He did not speak. He only waited, as though he knew the answer would come, and in time it always did. The pause stretched on. Minutes turned into what felt like hours. The counselors began to grow restless. Some aliens muttered angrily, tapping on their consoles or pacing in frustration. The hum of whispered debate filled the hall. Perhaps it is broken, a counselor from the desert world of Siroka said, his voice rising. This human is too unpredictable. Too different. The scanner cannot read it. We should send him back. But a small voice inside the council, a voice that had been quiet for centuries, spoke up. It belonged to an elder human ambassador named Clara, who had come to observe the proceedings. No, she said firmly. The scanner is not broken. It is confused. It has never seen a human behave like this. That is why it pauses. Humans are Unpredictable, yes, but in ways that can change everything. The counselors laughed softly at her words. Some of them looked at Liam with curiosity. Others looked at him with suspicion. But the longer the pause lasted, the more they noticed something strange. Liam was not afraid. He did not seem small or weak. In fact, in the midst of this uncertainty, he looked stronger than anyone else in the hall. His calmness in the face of a machine that had never paused before gave him a presence no other candidate had displayed. Then, slowly, some counselors began to study him more closely. They noticed how he held himself with dignity, even under the scrutiny of the scanner. They noticed how his mind seemed active and alert, even though he appeared quiet and simple. And they began to wonder, what if the pause was not a flaw? What if it was a sign that humanity, this human, was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen? The chamber remained silent. The scanner's glow flickered faintly but made no move. Liam waited patiently, his thoughts unreadable, his face calm. He did not fidget. He did not sweat. He simply existed in the hall, a small, ordinary human among beings of unimaginable power and intelligence. For the first time in centuries, the counselors began to feel uncertainty. For the first time, they questioned the rules they had always followed. They realized that they could not measure this human with the same scales they had used for every other candidate. And that realization both terrified and fascinated them. After what felt like an eternity, the oldest counselor of all, a being with scales that shimmered like diamonds, finally spoke. "It seems, we have not seen everything," he said slowly. "Perhaps this human shows us something new. Something we cannot yet understand." Liam nodded slightly, just enough to acknowledge the words, though he did not speak. The pause continued, and yet it no longer felt like a failure. It felt like the beginning of something. Something unknown. Something that might change the galaxy forever. And as the council watched, uncertain and wary, Liam stood quietly in front of the scanner, calm and patient. He was a human. Ordinary. Fragile, some might have thought. But in that pause, in that moment of uncertainty, he already seemed different. Powerful, in a way the galaxy could not yet measure. The day after the scanner paused at Liam, the council gathered again. This time, there was no room for hesitation. Liam was to face the full trial, a series of challenges designed to test the greatest minds in the galaxy. The counselors had prepared every simulation, puzzle, and moral test they could imagine. Everything had been calibrated for beings of intelligence far beyond human levels. They expected their candidates to perform with perfect precision. Liam entered the trial chamber, a massive dome filled with shifting lights and floating panels. The walls were transparent, showing the stars beyond, and strange machines hovered in the air, each one ready to measure thought, action, and decision with absolute accuracy. He could hear whispers echoing behind the glass of the observation deck. Doubts, speculations, even laughter from some of the alien counselors who still thought this human would fail. The first test began immediately. A complex puzzle floated in front of him, an array of lights and symbols that twisted and changed the moment he tried to touch them. It was designed to measure intelligence, memory, and logical reasoning. Candidates from other worlds had solved it in seconds during practice runs. Liam studied it quietly. Unlike the others, he did not rush. He let his mind wander, touched the symbols and patterns that were unusual, almost careless, and waited for the result. The lights flickered, changed color, and then, surprisingly, aligned perfectly. The scanner's voice, neutral and mechanical, recorded the result: success. The next challenge was a simulation of a planetary disaster. A colony on a distant world was being threatened by a massive storm, and Liam had to direct resources, evacuate civilians, and make choices that would decide thousands of lives. Other candidates solved this problem by calculating every probability, moving resources in precise patterns, and anticipating outcomes before the storm even formed. Liam acted differently. He watched the storm carefully, then made decisions based on instinct, trusting the judgment of the AI assistants in ways that others ignored. Sometimes he moved resources in ways the simulation seemed to disapprove of, sometimes he made choices that looked reckless. And yet, at the end, the colony survived. Not perfectly, some damage occurred, but far fewer casualties than the machine predicted. The counselors leaned closer to their consoles, murmuring among themselves. They could not understand it. The scanner had been programmed to measure logic and probability. Liam had broken its predictions without even knowing the formulas. Then came a test designed to measure empathy. Liam was placed in a simulation of a civil conflict between two alien species on a neutral world. Their cultures were entirely different, their values often in conflict, and they had been at war for decades. The scanner expected Liam to choose one side to impose order, as all previous candidates had done. It did not anticipate the human way. Liam spoke to both sides in the simulation, listening carefully, asking questions, and acknowledging fears that the machine could not measure. He negotiated compromises, suggested exchanges of resources, and even proposed new traditions that would honor both cultures. The aliens in the simulation hesitated, then agreed to his suggestions. The scanner made no sound. No light flickered. It had never seen a candidate solve a moral dilemma in a way that relied on compassion rather than logic. The hours passed. One test blended into another. Puzzles became moral simulations. Moral simulations became tactical challenges. Liam faced each one quietly, with a calm presence that slowly drew attention from the counselors. He did not speak much, but when he did, his words were simple, clear, and unexpected. During one test, Liam was asked to redirect a fleet of ships through dangerous asteroid fields while under enemy attack. The scanner expected him to calculate precise paths for each ship, avoiding obstacles and predicting enemy movements. Instead, Liam observed the fleet, noticed patterns, and gave orders that seemed almost casual. Trust the first group to hold steady. Move the second group in an arc. Use the smaller ships to distract. His instructions were vague by machine standards, yet the fleet moved exactly as he intended. The observers gasped. The scanner whirred, calculated, and paused. It could not anticipate the human method. Some counselors began to murmur among themselves. This human is reckless, one said. It is dangerous. Or brilliant, another countered quietly. It does not think like us. That is the point. We are seeing something new. As the day went on, Liam faced a challenge unlike any the other candidates had seen. The scanner presented him with a simulation of a galaxy-wide crisis. A rogue AI fleet, countless in number, threatened to destabilize trade, destroy planets, and enslave entire populations. The task was impossible by normal logic. All previous candidates had failed in practice runs. Liam studied the scenario quietly. He did not panic. He did not run calculations in his head in the way the machine expected. Instead, he asked simple questions. What does the AI want? How do we make it stop without destroying everything? Which planets can we save first? He suggested actions that seemed illogical to observers. Some humans, he realized, could be moved to safety by creating small diversions. The AI could be tricked into overextending by making fake transmissions. He took risks, directing fleets into unpredictable patterns, sacrificing unimportant resources to save more important ones, trusting instinct over certainty. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the crisis began to stabilize. The counselors leaned forward, eyes wide. Even the most experienced alien strategists could not comprehend what they were seeing. The scanner whirred again, lights flickering wildly, trying to keep up. But it could not. Liam's actions defied its algorithms. Throughout the trial, Liam did not speak boastfully. He never demanded recognition or tried to outshine others. He simply acted. He observed. He adapted. Each challenge was a test not of perfect calculation but of judgment, resilience, and creativity. And with every challenge, it became clearer that his mind worked differently from the scanner, and differently from any other being in the galaxy. Some counselors grew anxious. It is unpredictable, one whispered. We cannot trust this human. Others began to hope. Perhaps we have been wrong, said another softly. Perhaps there is something in this human we do not understand. Something powerful. The trial continued for what felt like days. Liam faced each simulation with calm determination, never losing focus, never panicking, never yielding to the pressure. He trusted himself, trusted others, and took risks that seemed impossible to calculate. And yet, the outcomes were often better than expected. The scanner, for the first time in its long history, could not produce a simple result. Its readings were inconsistent, fluctuating wildly. For every moment of apparent failure, Liam achieved a success that the machine could not predict. Finally, after what seemed like endless hours, the trial chamber fell silent. Liam had completed every test. He stood quietly, hands folded, calm and steady as ever. The counselors waited, unsure what the result would be. They had expected a clear answer, success or failure, approved or rejected. But now there was none. The scanner, despite all its power, could not decide. It had never encountered a mind like Liam's before. Not entirely logical, not entirely predictable, yet brilliant in ways that defied its calculations. A soft murmur spread through the council chamber. Some whispered in awe, some in fear. Liam, the simple human, had completed the trial of the galaxy's greatest minds. And yet, the ultimate verdict remained uncertain. Liam did not move, did not smile, did not speak. He simply waited, calm, patient, as if he already knew the truth. That in this galaxy, sometimes the heart, the mind, and the courage of a single human could change everything, even a machine that had never been wrong. And for the first time in centuries, the Council realized that the trial had not been about proving the humans' weakness. It had been about showing the galaxy that there was something in humanity that could not be measured, calculated, or predicted. Something powerful, unexpected, and extraordinary. Liam looked around the chamber, observing the counselors, the candidates, and the scanner. He did not need the machine's approval to know his own strength. And the counselors, watching him, began to understand that perhaps this ordinary, simple human could achieve something no other being had ever done. The trial had ended, but the story was only beginning. Liam had passed the impossible tests, not by following the rules but by creating his own path. And the galaxy, for the first time, was forced to recognize that humans could be more than ordinary. The scanner whirred softly, lights flickering, still unable to give an answer. Liam remained calm, waiting, ready for whatever came next. Liam stepped into the largest chamber he had ever seen. The walls were invisible, or perhaps made of light, for he could see the stars beyond as if he were floating in space itself. The floor hummed softly under his feet, and the air was filled with a quiet, vibrating energy. This was no ordinary simulation. It was the trial of worlds, a test the Council used only for the most extraordinary candidates. Entire civilizations, with their peoples, cities, and governments, existed here in a perfect, living projection. The candidates were expected to maintain order, solve crises, and prevent disasters on a scale no one could truly measure. Liam looked around, taking it all in. Other candidates from distant planets had already stepped forward, their faces calm and confident. They carried themselves with precision, moving in patterns the scanner recognized instantly. Every calculation they made was perfect. Every solution they gave was expected. When it was Liam's turn, the simulation began immediately. The first challenge appeared as a cluster of planets, each in chaos. On one planet, violent storms threatened millions of lives. On another, a civil war raged. On a third, disease spread uncontrollably. The candidates were expected to respond with complete efficiency, allocating resources, moving fleets, and controlling events with absolute control. Liam did not panic. He surveyed the planets, observing the needs of each population and the resources available. He noticed patterns that the machine had not indicated, small weaknesses in the simulations, opportunities that could be exploited not by calculation but by careful observation and intuition. He began with the war-torn planet. A human might have chosen to intervene with force, but Liam did not. Instead, he contacted leaders on both sides, listening carefully to their concerns. He suggested compromises, small gestures that could build trust. He ordered supply drops to villages, not armies, and allowed both sides to retain their dignity. To the other candidates and counselors watching, it seemed chaotic, even reckless. But over the next hours of simulation, the fighting decreased. Civilians were spared, and small alliances began to form where none had existed before. Next, Liam turned to the planet with the storm. The scanner expected a precise plan, a pre-calculated evacuation pattern. Liam watched the storm carefully, observing its patterns, its movement, its speed. Instead of relying on exact formulas, he made decisions based on instinct, sending resources to the most vulnerable areas first. When the storm shifted unexpectedly, he adapted immediately, moving people and supplies to new locations, often in ways that seemed random to observers. And yet, the result was better than any of the other candidates' plans. Lives were saved. Cities were partially damaged, but no population was entirely lost. The scanner blinked, its lights flickering in confusion. It had not predicted this outcome. The disease-ridden planet was next. The other candidates had already implemented strict quarantines and rigid protocols, relying on science and probability to contain the outbreak. Liam approached it differently. He asked questions about the people's culture, about their beliefs and habits. He worked with local leaders to educate communities, to set up practical solutions that fit their way of life. He sent medical teams where they were needed most, and organized volunteers in ways the simulation had not anticipated. The disease slowed. Many lives were saved. The scanner paused again, unable to categorize his actions. Throughout the trial, chaos followed him. Ships collided, resources ran low, alliances faltered. But somehow, each disaster that arose was turned into a small victory. The other candidates were precise, careful, perfect. But their perfection often failed in unexpected ways. Liam, on the other hand, trusted humans, aliens, and even the simulation itself. He made mistakes, but he also made bold decisions that no formula could have predicted. And in the end, more lives survived under his leadership than any other candidate. The counselors watching were stunned. Some of them whispered nervously, unable to understand how one human could achieve such results. Others leaned forward in curiosity, fascinated by the unexpected strategies Liam used. "Look at him," one counselor said quietly. "He is not following the rules and yet he succeeds." "He is reckless," another countered. "He relies on luck more than skill." But a third voice, softer and thoughtful, disagreed. "No," it said. "He trusts people, not machines. That is why he succeeds. He does what no formula can do. He adapts. He sees what is really important." The simulation grew more complex. Liam faced multiple crises at once. A fleet of ships was caught in a solar storm, a planet's leaders refused to cooperate, and another world faced a famine. Most candidates would have prioritized efficiency, choosing one crisis and ignoring the rest until they could be solved. Liam did not. He acted simultaneously, coordinating efforts across the simulation in ways that seemed almost impossible. He sent envoys to negotiate peace, ordered food supplies to areas that were hardest hit, and instructed ships to protect civilians rather than engage in battle. Every decision carried risk. Every choice could have failed. And often things went wrong. Ships collided, convoys were lost, and alliances faltered. But Liam always adapted. He learned from the failures and made new decisions immediately. He trusted himself, trusted others, and acted boldly where the rules offered no guidance. The scanner watched in silence. It had never encountered a mind like this before. Every other candidate followed predictable patterns, and every other solution could be categorized, measured, and evaluated. Liam's decisions, however, were fluid, intuitive, and unpredictable. The machine whirred, its lights flickering, unable to keep up. Some counselors grew anxious. "He is too unpredictable," one whispered. "We cannot approve this human. It is dangerous." Others were beginning to understand. "Perhaps unpredictability is not weakness," said another. "Perhaps it is strength. Perhaps he sees the universe in ways we cannot." Hours passed. Liam did not rest. He moved from one crisis to another, observing, adapting, negotiating, and acting. When a planet's leaders ignored his advice, he spoke to their people directly, convincing them to work together. When fleets failed to respond as expected, he changed strategies mid-course, finding solutions that no one anticipated. Despite the chaos, lives were saved. Communities were protected. Conflicts were resolved in small, meaningful ways. Liam did not aim for perfection. He aimed for survival, for hope, for the possibility that people could work together even under impossible conditions. The counselors watched in awe. They had studied leaders for centuries, had examined intelligence, strategy, and logic, yet none had done what this human was doing. Liam's mind was not perfect. It was not flawless. It was human. And somehow, that humanity was enough to succeed where machines and aliens alike could not. Finally, the simulation reached its final stage. A galaxy-wide disaster threatened to destroy multiple civilizations at once. The other candidates had already failed, unable to act quickly enough to save everyone. Liam surveyed the situation calmly. He identified key leaders, resources, and weaknesses in the disaster. He sent envoys, fleets, and aid in ways that seemed chaotic but were perfectly timed. The disasters were not completely avoided. Some systems suffered damage. Some people were lost. But overall, civilization survived. The galaxy, even in the simulation, had been saved. Liam had done what no other candidate had done. And the scanner, as always, blinked, whirred, and paused. The counselors remained silent. They had expected results, approvals, and rejections. They had not expected this. They had not expected a human to navigate the trial in ways they could not measure, to succeed in ways they could not predict. Liam stood quietly, hands folded, calm and steady. He did not celebrate. He did not boast. He simply observed, ready for whatever challenge came next. The trial of worlds had tested him, pushed him to the limits, and shown him to be capable of extraordinary leadership. And for the first time, the counselors realized that perhaps they had underestimated humans. Perhaps this simple, ordinary human had something no machine, no alien, and no logic could ever fully understand. The scanner remained silent, unable to categorize his actions. Liam had acted boldly, trusted allies, and found solutions where none existed before. Chaos had followed him, but life had survived. And in that survival, the council saw a new possibility. Humanity was more than its limits. Humanity was unpredictable, adaptable, and powerful in ways no one had imagined. Liam took a deep breath, calm as ever, and waited. He had completed the trial of worlds. And yet, he knew this was only the beginning. The trial was over. The massive chamber, once filled with the hum of simulations, the flicker of lights, and the murmurs of candidates and counselors, had grown quiet. The scanner, the ancient machine that had never paused or failed, had spent hours observing Liam. Now it finally spoke. Its voice echoed through the hall, soft yet firm, with a tone that seemed almost human in its clarity. Crownless king. There was a pause among the counselors. Some looked confused, others shocked, and a few whispered to each other in disbelief. Crownless king? What did it mean? Had the machine finally broken? But Liam stood quietly, calm, composed, and fully aware of what the words meant. He did not smile. He did not bow. He simply remained still, taking a breath as if he had been expecting this answer all along. The hall was silent, waiting for someone to react. Then Liam spoke. His voice was steady, clear, and simple, carrying across the chamber so that everyone could hear. A leader isn't about perfection, he said. It's about seeing people, trusting them, and acting when it matters most. The counselors stared at him. They had spent centuries studying leadership, training candidates, and relying on the scanner's judgments. They had expected clear answers, titles, and approval. They had never considered that leadership could be measured by something other than rules, calculations, and logic. Liam's words challenged everything they believed. Some counselors shifted nervously in their seats. They whispered to one another. "Is this human serious?" one asked. "How can someone lead without following the rules?" But others looked thoughtful. "Perhaps that is the point," a softer voice said. "Perhaps we have been wrong all this time. Perhaps leadership is not about following rules perfectly, but about guiding others through uncertainty." The scanner's lights pulsed softly, almost as if it too were considering this idea. For centuries, it had been trained to identify the perfect candidate, to recognize logical decisions, flawless strategies, and precise morality. Liam had passed the trials not by being perfect but by being human. He had adapted. He had trusted. He had taken risks that no other candidate would have dared. And in the end, more lives had been saved, more problems had been solved, and more hope had been restored than the machine could calculate. A counselor from the icy world of Talara leaned forward, her long fingers brushing the surface of her console. "He does not fit the definition of a ruler," she said quietly. "But he succeeded where others failed. Perhaps this is what leadership should be." Liam continued to speak, his voice calm but full of conviction. "I do not need a crown to lead. I do not need a title to guide people. Leadership is not about being the strongest, the smartest, or the most flawless. It is about understanding those you serve, listening to them, and making decisions that protect and empower them, even when the outcome is uncertain." The counselors murmured among themselves. Some were still skeptical. Others began to nod, slowly, reluctantly. They had never thought of leadership this way. They had always measured it in terms of power, control, and perfection. Liam was showing them that humanity was different. Humanity could act boldly, trust instinct, and inspire others even when logic failed. One of the older counselors, a being with skin like polished stone, spoke up. "So the scanner recognizes this human as a leader, but without a crown?" "Yes," Liam said softly. "A crown does not make a leader. Actions do. Decisions do. Humanity does." The chamber was quiet again. No one moved. The scanner's lights pulsed slowly as if reflecting the truth of his words. The counselors realized that for the first time, they were not judging Liam, they were learning from him. He had passed every test, faced every simulation, and succeeded in ways that no one could predict. Yet the machine could not give him a traditional title because he had proven that leadership was more than rules and formulas. Some counselors shifted nervously. "This could cause problems," one muttered. "How can the galaxy accept a ruler without a crown? Without approval? Without tradition?" But Liam looked at them steadily. "A crown is only a symbol," he said. "It does not grant wisdom, compassion, or courage. The galaxy needs more than a symbol. It needs someone who can see the truth, who can act when others hesitate, who can trust and inspire even in the worst circumstances." The counselors fell silent. Liam's words were simple, yet they carried weight. They made sense in a way that no machine could calculate. They realized that leadership was not about being perfect. It was about being human. It was about taking responsibility, even when the outcome was uncertain. 4 hours, the chamber remained quiet as the counselors absorbed the meaning of the scanner's judgment. Some were impressed, some doubtful, and some afraid. Liam did not speak again. He did not need to. His presence alone was enough to show the counselors that the galaxy had never seen leadership like this before. Finally, a young counselor from the planet Lyra spoke. Perhaps this is what the galaxy needs, she said, her voice soft but steady. A leader who is not perfect, who is willing to take risks, who trusts people. A crownless king. Liam nodded slightly, acknowledging her words. He had completed the trial, passed the impossible tests, and shown that humanity could succeed where logic alone failed. And yet he did not see this as an end. He knew the challenges ahead would be far greater than any simulation. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers, conflicts, and uncertainty. But he also knew that humanity had something no machine, no alien, and no formula could replicate: courage, adaptability, and compassion. The counselors began to discuss quietly among themselves. Some debated whether the title was acceptable, whether tradition demanded a crown. Others realized that tradition had nothing to do with the galaxy's survival. Liam had proven that leadership was measured not by symbols but by actions. Outside the chamber, the stars stretched endlessly, a reminder of how vast the galaxy was, how many worlds needed guidance, and how much work remained. Liam took a deep breath, calm and steady, and looked around the room. The scanner's lights blinked softly, still processing, still uncertain. For centuries it had made perfect judgments. For the first time it could only recognize something new, something human, and give a title that fit the truth: Crownless King. The counselors watched him closely. Some were hesitant. Some were inspired. But all of them realized that the galaxy would never be the same. This human had done what no other candidate could do. He had led not with calculation or perfection, but with humanity. And that, they realized slowly, was the greatest power of all. Liam stood quietly, serene and composed. The weight of the title did not frighten him. He did not seek power. He sought understanding, action, and hope. And the counselors, for the first time, saw that perhaps the galaxy had chosen the right leader, not because of tradition or rules, but because he represented something no one had ever measured: the human spirit. As the chamber slowly emptied, whispers followed him. Some counselors praised his wisdom, some questioned the future, and some wondered how such a simple human could carry the weight of the galaxy. Liam walked through the hall calmly, not seeking approval but ready to face the challenges ahead. He understood that leadership was never easy, that every choice carried risk, and that sometimes success came not from perfection, but from courage, trust, and humanity. The scanner remained still, lights pulsing faintly. It had recognized something extraordinary, but it could not measure it. No machine could. Liam, the human, had achieved what no one had thought possible. He had become the crownless king. And for the first time, the council realized that leadership could be something beyond rules, beyond crowns, beyond tradition. Could be human. Liam paused for a moment, looking out toward the stars. He felt neither fear nor pride. He felt responsibility, determination, and a quiet confidence. The galaxy would challenge him, would test him. But he was ready. For the first time, a human had shown that leadership was not about being perfect. It was about acting when it mattered most. And in that simple truth, the council understood that the galaxy's future had just changed forever. The chamber had emptied, but whispers still floated through the council halls. Some counselors were unsettled, questioning the scanner's judgment. Humans are weak, one said quietly to a colleague. They are unpredictable. How can we trust them with the galaxy? Others nodded, their faces uneasy. They are too emotional, too impulsive. Logic cannot guide them, another added. They looked at Liam's calm figure in their memories, unable to understand how such a simple human had succeeded where advanced minds had struggled. But even among doubt, there were those who observed differently. Some counselors had seen more than mere failure or unpredictability. They had seen courage, insight, and compassion. They had seen leadership that no machine, no formula, no strategy could measure. And slowly the first allies began to emerge. Maya, a diplomat from Eros Prime, approached Liam after the trial. She was smaller than most candidates, with bright amber eyes that seemed to notice everything. I did not expect you to succeed, she said, her voice quiet but steady. I thought your methods would fail. But you were right. You saw what mattered. You acted when others hesitated. You saved lives. Liam looked at her and nodded. I didn't do it alone, he said. The people in the simulation, the leaders, the communities, they helped me. You helped me too, even if only by observing. That is what leadership is, understanding people and working with them. Maya smiled. Then I want to help you again, she said. In the real galaxy, not just in simulations. If you will let me, I will stand by your side. Liam considered her words. He did not need validation, but he understood the importance of allies. Then we work together, he said. We do what must be done, not what is expected. Soon another approached. Noah, a strategist from Lyra Station, had observed the trial closely. He was calm, precise, and respected by many counselors for his sharp mind. I was skeptical at first, he admitted. I thought your methods would be chaos. But they weren't. You see things machines cannot. You act where logic fails. That is rare. That is valuable. Liam nodded again. Then we have a plan, he said simply. We combine what you know with what I see. Together we can prepare for what comes next. With Maya and Noah at his side, Liam began to navigate the council in ways he had not needed to before. He did not speak with arrogance. He did not demand respect. Instead, he acted calmly, thoughtfully, and decisively. He listened to concerns, asked questions, and proposed solutions that made sense even when they were unusual. The counselors who had doubted him began to notice. Some of them were wary, watching each action with suspicion. Others began to see that human intuition and courage could accomplish things machines could not. It was subtle at first. A successful negotiation here, a disaster avoided there, but soon the pattern became clear. Even the enemies of humans began to take notice. Beings from distant worlds who had previously dismissed humans as weak, began to understand that unpredictability was not weakness, was a strength. Humans did not follow formulas. They did not act the way machines expected. They could adapt, improvise, and respond in ways that no strategy could fully predict. During one council session, a minor conflict arose between two planets on the edge of the galaxy. Their leaders were stubborn, their cultures incompatible, and the scanner's calculations predicted months of stalemate. Liam spoke quietly with Maya and Noah. They devised a plan that was unorthodox but practical. Liam personally contacted both leaders, not with threats or orders, but with questions, listening carefully to their concerns, showing respect, and offering compromises that the machine had not considered. The council watched in astonishment as the two planets agreed to a temporary alliance. What the scanner had predicted as months of war was resolved in days. Some counselors whispered in disbelief. Others leaned forward, fascinated. Liam did not celebrate. He had simply done what was necessary. But the effect was clear. Human intuition, courage, and kindness could change outcomes even machines could not predict. Not all counselors were convinced. Some still whispered that humans were too unpredictable, too emotional, too fragile to lead. This is dangerous, one muttered. We cannot rely on such a species. Liam heard the murmurs but did not respond. Instead, he focused on action. He worked with Maya and Noah to review situations across the galaxy, identifying conflicts, crises, and opportunities for resolution. They were not always easy. Some systems resisted cooperation. Some leaders refused to compromise. Some worlds seemed beyond help. But Liam's approach was consistent. Observe, understand, and act decisively, trusting people to respond in ways no machine could calculate. Over time, the council began to see the effect. Problems that had seemed impossible were solved. Tensions that could have escalated into war were eased. Communities began to cooperate across cultural and planetary boundaries. The galaxy was not perfect, but it was stabilizing in ways that logic alone could not achieve. Even the skeptics began to notice. Perhaps this human is more capable than we imagined, one admitted quietly. Not because of strength but because of unpredictability. He is not bound by rules or fear. He acts. Maya smiled at Liam during a quiet moment. You have changed how they see humans, she said. They cannot measure us. They cannot predict us. And that makes us powerful. Liam looked at her and nodded. We are not perfect, he said. We do not need to be. But we can act. We can adapt. We can lead. And sometimes that is enough. Noah added, and it is more than enough. The galaxy has never seen anything like this. The scanner cannot measure it. Others cannot predict it. But it works. The three of them, human and allies, began to form a quiet but powerful network. They did not seek glory. They did not seek domination. They sought results. They sought solutions. And wherever they acted, change followed. Soon, news of Liam's actions spread beyond the council. Some worlds began to trust him. Some leaders sought his advice. Even adversaries began to recognize that humans could not be controlled or predicted. The warning came suddenly. Alarms echoed across the council chambers and throughout the galaxy. A rogue AI fleet, massive and relentless, was moving through nearby systems. Entire planets were at risk, trade hubs, colonies, and even capitals. The fleet was precise, calculating, and utterly destructive. Ships it attacked were destroyed in moments. The scanner, the ancient machine that had never failed, attempted to contain the fleet, but its calculations faltered. For the first time in centuries, the AI was beyond even the machine's control. The council was in panic. Leaders argued, debated, and blamed one another. Strategies were proposed, alliances called into question, and fleets redirected, but every attempt failed. The AI was relentless. Time was running out. Planets were being destroyed faster than anyone could evacuate them. The scanner's lights flickered with confusion. It could not predict the fleet's next moves, and without prediction, no plan could succeed. Liam watched calmly, standing among Maya, Noah, and a small group of trusted allies. He did not panic. He did not shout or demand orders. Instead, he observed, studied the reports, and listened to the council's debates. His mind worked quickly but quietly, connecting threads the others missed. He noticed patterns in the AI's attacks that others ignored. Small anomalies, repeated behaviors, and overconfidence in its own calculations. He understood that it was a machine, yes, but even machines had weaknesses, flaws, and blind spots. He spoke quietly to Maya and Noah. We cannot fight this with fleets alone. We cannot rely on the scanner. We need strategy, diplomacy, and instinct together. We need to act where logic fails. Maya nodded. You mean we use the AI's patterns against it? Liam looked at her. Not just that. We use every tool we have, trust the people we can, predict where it expects us, and then act differently. We have to be unpredictable. Noah frowned thoughtfully. It's risky. If we fail. We won't, Liam said simply. We adapt, we observe, we act. That is all we can do. And that is enough. For hours they worked in secret. Liam coordinated with planetary leaders, convincing them to evacuate civilians not according to the scanner's pre-calculated routes, but along paths designed to mislead the AI. He deployed fleets to positions that seemed random, confusing the enemy. He sent messages and negotiations to neutralize AI-controlled systems, offering them solutions that machines would not predict. Every move was bold, every action daring. Chaos seemed to follow him as it had in previous trials, but it was purposeful chaos. The council watched, some in horror, some in awe. The other candidates had tried to follow procedure, relying on data and prediction. Their fleets were destroyed, their plans failed. But Liam's methods, unpredictable and human, began to turn the tide. He trusted instinct and intuition where machines could not. He inspired cooperation where others saw only conflict. And slowly, piece by piece, systems that had been falling were stabilized. The rogue AI fleet struck again. It targeted a major trade hub, a city of millions. Sensors predicted total destruction. Liam acted. He diverted ships to lure parts of the fleet into empty space while simultaneously sending drones to create false signals. The AI hesitated, unable to process the unexpected. The civilians were evacuated. Damage was minimized. Lives were saved. The scanner blinked again, recording the result but unable to categorize it. Counselors murmured among themselves. Some were terrified. Others began to see a pattern. It is not power that saved them, one whispered. It is human unpredictability. It is intuition. Hours turned into days. The AI fleet, once unstoppable, was slowed. Liam's strategy combined careful observation, bold moves, and alliances across worlds. Planets that had once been isolated were now coordinating under his guidance. Civilians were evacuated, fleets reorganized, and AI systems tricked into conflict with themselves. Each step was unpredictable yet precise in effect. Even leaders who had doubted humans began to respect Liam's approach. They observed that he did not act recklessly. His risks were calculated, but not in numbers or formulas. They were calculated in understanding people, situations, and the AI's patterns in ways the scanner could not anticipate. Humans could act creatively, unexpectedly, and adaptively. That was their greatest strength. Finally, the rogue AI fleet was neutralized. Its ships either disabled, redirected, or destroyed through a combination of strategy, diplomacy, and instinct. The galaxy had been saved, not by raw power, not by rules, not by flawless logic, but by the courage, intuition, and adaptability of a human. The council convened immediately. They were exhausted, shaken, and yet filled with awe. Some still doubted, fearing the unpredictability that had saved the galaxy. Others realized the truth they could no longer ignore. Leadership did not require a crown or absolute control or perfect calculation. Leadership required insight, courage, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. The oldest counselor, a being with skin like polished stone, rose from his seat. His voice was deep, resonant, and calm. "The galaxy has learned a new lesson," he said. "We have relied too long on machines and formulas. We have believed that leadership is about control. But today a human has shown us otherwise. Leadership does not need a crown. It does not need perfection. It needs understanding, courage, and action." There was silence, then murmurs of agreement. Slowly, one by one, counselors bowed their heads, acknowledging the truth. Liam had not sought the crown. He had not demanded recognition. Yet the galaxy, in its collective decision, had chosen him, not by title or symbol but by action. Liam stood quietly, calm and steady. He did not raise a hand to accept a crown because there was none. He did not smile. He had done what was needed, not what was expected. Around him, Maya and Noah watched with pride, understanding that this moment was the culmination of their efforts and the human spirit he represented. Across the galaxy, reports came in. Worlds that had faced destruction were now safe. Conflicts that had seemed inevitable were resolved. Systems that had been isolated now cooperated. And everywhere there was a growing recognition. Humans were unpredictable, yes, but that unpredictability was strength. It was a force that no machine could anticipate, no enemy could fully counter, and no formula could replicate. Liam's name spread quickly, though he did not seek fame. He became known as the Crownless King, a title that symbolized something greater than a traditional ruler. It symbolized hope, ingenuity, and the unique strength of humanity. It symbolized the power to act where others could not, to inspire where others doubted, and to change outcomes that seemed impossible. Enemies who had dismissed humans as weak began to reconsider. They watched, cautious now, realizing that unpredictability was dangerous. Not because humans were physically strong, but because their minds, their decisions, and their actions could not be fully predicted. Humans could adapt, improvise, and achieve results that logic alone could not accomplish. The galaxy had learned a simple truth: strength alone does not save worlds. Perfection alone does not solve crises. Unpredictability, courage, and action do. Humans, with all their imperfections and instincts, could accomplish what no machine or formula could. Liam looked out toward the stars, the council chamber behind him, the galaxy wide and full of challenges ahead. He felt no pride, only responsibility. The AI threat had been neutralized, but the galaxy remained vast, full of dangers and uncertainties. And yet, he also felt confidence, because he had learned that humanity's greatest strength was its unpredictability, its courage, its ability to act when it mattered most. Maya placed a hand on his shoulder. "They understand now," she said softly. "Not all of them, but enough. They know what you have shown them. Humans are different. Humans are powerful." Liam nodded. "It is not about power," he said quietly. "It is about action, understanding, and trust. And we must continue to act. There is always more to be done." Noah added, "Then we keep moving. We work together. We act where others hesitate. That is how we guide the galaxy." And so Liam the human stood as the crownless king. He did not wear a crown. He did not sit on a throne. His authority came from action, insight, and the recognition of what humans could achieve. Around him, the galaxy began to shift. People, leaders, and civilizations saw that unpredictability was not weakness. It was the greatest strength they had ever underestimated. In the end, it was simple. The scanner had once paused at a human. The council had once doubted. And now, after trials, crises, and impossible challenges, the galaxy had learned a truth it could not ignore. Humanity's unpredictability, its courage, and its intuition were more powerful than any machine, any formula, and even many armies. Liam stood among allies looking to the stars. The AI fleet was gone, but the galaxy remained full of threats. And yet he was ready. For the first time, the council, the planets, and even his enemies knew leadership did not need a crown. Leadership needed action. And humanity, in all its unpredictability, was capable of extraordinary things. The galaxy had changed forever.